What if you woke up tomorrow and realized every relationship you've ever lost was because of one thing you keep doing and you had no idea you were doing it? Not a bad personality, not bad luck. One unconscious pattern, repeating quietly in the background of every friendship, every romance, every falling out you've ever had. That is not a hypothetical. That is happening to more people than you think. And today, we are going to walk through exactly what that pattern looks like, why your brain refuses to let you see it, and what changes the moment you finally do. Let's start with what this actually looks like in real life. You have a friend you were inseparable from for years. Then something small happened. A comment that landed wrong. A canceled plan that felt like more than a canceled plan. And slowly, without either of you really deciding to, the friendship just dissolved. You told yourself it ran its course. People grow apart. That's life. Then it happened again. Different person, different reason, same quiet ending, and again. At some point, you stop blaming the other people, but you also stop short of fully blaming yourself because you genuinely couldn't see what you were doing. You just knew that closeness, real closeness, never seemed to last for you. Here is what is actually happening. Your brain does not experience relationships the way it experiences other things. It does not evaluate them based on how good they are for you. It evaluates them based on how familiar they feel. And familiar, for most people, means a very specific emotional temperature, one that was set in childhood before you had any say in the matter. If you grew up in an environment where love was inconsistent, where connection came and went depending on someone else's mood, your nervous system learned to read that inconsistency as normal. So when a relationship becomes too stable, too predictable, too safe, something in you gets restless. It doesn't feel like love anymore, it feels like stagnation. And without realizing it, you start creating distance. Not dramatically, not consciously, just small withdrawals. Replying a little slower, showing up a little less, sharing a little less of yourself, until the other person feels it, even if they can't name it, and they start to pull back too. And then you feel the distance and your nervous system finally wakes up. So you reach back out, you re-engage, things get warm again, until they get too warm, and the cycle starts over. This is called a proximity distance cycle, and it is one of the most invisible relationship patterns that exists. Because from the inside, it never feels like a pattern. It feels like a series of individual circumstances. A busy season at work, a friendship that naturally cooled, a partner who needed space, always a reasonable explanation for each individual withdrawal. The pattern is only visible from the outside, or from a much later vantage point, looking back. Here is the part that is hard to accept. The people who left your life, a lot of them did not leave because they stopped caring. They left because they got tired of reaching for someone who kept stepping back. They interpreted your distance as disinterest. They protected themselves the only way they knew how. And you, watching them pull away, felt confirmation of something you already secretly believed, that people eventually leave, that closeness doesn't last, that you are, in some fundamental way, hard to stay close to. And that belief, quiet, rarely spoken, almost never examined, is what is actually running the pattern. Because our beliefs about relationships don't just shape how we feel, they shape what we do. A person who genuinely believes they are easy to love behaves differently than someone who is always bracing for rejection. They lean in instead of pulling back. They let things be easy instead of unconsciously testing them. They allow closeness without needing to manage it. Now, here is the what if that actually matters. What if you could see the pattern clearly? Not as a character flaw, not as evidence that something is wrong with you, but just as a learned behavior that made complete sense at some point and now no longer serves you? Because here is what changes the moment you can see it. You stop interpreting restlessness as a signal that something is wrong with the relationship. You recognize it as a signal that something is happening inside you, a familiar discomfort arising, old programming activating, not truth, just noise. And instead of acting on it, instead of going quiet or finding reasons to pull back or suddenly getting very busy, you do something different. You name it, even just to yourself. I'm feeling the urge to create distance right now. That is information about my history, not about this relationship. That one moment of recognition changes everything. Not because awareness magically rewires the brain, but because awareness creates a gap between the impulse and the action. And in that gap, you get to choose. Most people never get that gap. The impulse fires and the behavior follows automatically. So seamlessly, it doesn't even feel like a choice. But once you can see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. And every time you choose differently, every time you stay present when your instinct is to withdraw, you are building a new template. slowly replacing the old definition of normal with something that actually reflects who you are now, not who you had to be then. This does not happen overnight. The pull toward old patterns is strong. You will feel the restlessness, and sometimes you will act on it before you even catch yourself. That is not failure. That is what rewiring looks like. Messy, non-linear, full of backslides. But here is what is also true. Every relationship you still have access to, every friendship that is slightly cooler than it used to be, every connection you have let drift is still recoverable. Not all of them, but more than you think. Because most people do not stop caring about someone because of distance. They stop reaching because reaching kept going unanswered. You're reaching back, genuinely, without agenda, without needing them to explain the distance, is almost always enough to restart something real. The pattern ends the moment you decide to stay. Not permanently, not perfectly. Just today. Just in this conversation. Just this once, instead of going quiet, you say the thing you were about to swallow. You would be surprised how much of your life is still available to you. You just have to stop walking away from it.